Today, I'm going to talk to you about narcissistic personality disorder. In order for someone to be diagnosed with this disorder, they must meet the criteria in the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. This disorder can be very, very difficult to treat. Many narcissists have memorized what societal norms are and what they should look like, or they've learned to imitate emotions or feelings or caring when there's really an absence of that. What I've noticed is they can kind of go in and out of the disorder. And then you have some people who are on the higher end of the spectrum who could be extremely manipulative, very power hungry, who have learned to mask the disorder very well, but they're doing a lot of damage, but they're just smoother at doing it. You can tell they're not connecting to the feelings of other people. They don't know what you're talking about when you start to talk about how do you feel inside, connecting with sadness or their own anger or their own frustration. It's sort of like, what are you talking about? They have this elusive affect. Maybe someone who's older who has narcissistic personality disorder has learned to mask better or express better with teenagers or even maybe lower functioning people. It can be very difficult for them to connect it within the self. They can be acting out those behaviors. They can show you that they're angry. They can be yelling at you and still not take any type of ownership. And you're watching them yelling and screaming, but they're not connecting with it at all. It looks like pure defiance, but I think it's more than that. I think it's deeper than that. I don't know if it's an impossibility to admit that they're wrong because they have to protect themselves from some of the damage that was done in their lives at an early age, or if they truly know that they're doing something wrong or mean, but it's too difficult or nearly impossible for them to own up to their own actions. That's very challenging to work with, because if someone can't see their own faults or the things that they do wrong, they're going to go out and commit crimes. They're going to do things that are disrespectful. They're going to have trouble with interpersonal relationships. They don't really relate to empathy with other people. If someone is hurting, it's sort of hard for them to understand what that person feels. I do think that some people who are more higher functioning do have some capacity to understand the emotions of others. To say that all narcissists have zero capacity, I think that's not true. They can sort of go in and out. If they're triggered by something hurtful, painful, humiliation, then you can see them back off of the ownership of, yeah, I did this to you. I definitely have witnessed people with this disorder do something blatantly disrespectful, wrong, an action towards another person, and they absolutely cannot see it. They see what that other person did to them or what they perceived as an insult that might not be an insult, but because their perception of whatever that was caused them to feel some sort of shame, they're going to come out swinging, they're going to come out fighting, but they don't see their own action. They could even ask you over and over again, what did I do wrong? You can explain to them and they're still oblivious to it. A person can kind of float by and you don't see many of the symptoms at all with some people, and then they get triggered and bam. Something else that I've seen in some narcissists, I have to insult you, I have to put you down. And I don't know if it's because within themselves they really feel very small in that moment, and so they're projecting that onto someone, or they need to feel more powerful, or they need to feel bigger than what they're feeling, or they look at someone else and feel strong or intense envy towards that person, and they want to break them down and make them feel terrible about themselves. If they're high functioning, I think to a certain degree they can understand when you tell them that that's not okay. Higher functioning narcissists, they kind of know. Sometimes if they're in one of those triggered moments, I think there's a piece of them that knows that something is not quite right. So they might snap out of it for a second, like, what am I doing? But being able to stop that behavior could be very difficult for them. Protect yourself. Relationships with emotionally unstable people can be one-sided and psychologically draining. When dealing with a narcissist, protect your self-esteem. Replace their belittling actions with positive affirmations that remind you who you are and what your morals and values are. Remember, you have the right to be respected. Trying to adjust your life to the ever-changing rules of the narcissist won't work. Protect yourself by staying grounded in who you are. When you feel manipulated, used, or mistreated, don't waste energy in your head trying to figure out what you said or did wrong. Set boundaries. Don't allow confusion to set in when the traits you admire become the traits that cause you hurt. Trying to change who you are in hopes of making a narcissist happy or getting them off your back is never a good idea. And finally, create space between you and the narcissist, and don't feel guilty. Okay, so let's talk about how someone develops this disorder. A kid had super permissive parents that didn't correct their behavior. When you're a little kid, you're gonna do some things wrong. You have to be corrected. You have to set boundaries. Otherwise, no one would need parents, right? There are gonna be consequences to bad behavior. A parent of a narcissist may be way too permissive. An example of that would be Nellie Olson on Little House on the Prairie. There could be some narcissism in that parent where they want that kid to feel like they are better than anyone else. Being super permissive doesn't make a kid love you more. It makes them hate themselves more at a deeper level because you're not helping them to set boundaries and develop their conscience. So it kind of works in a counterintuitive way. Another school of thought stems from not enough parenting. They've been left on their own at a very young age to sort of figure out life on their own, figure out what the rules are, take care of themselves. But they have to create this sort of world to cope with that neglect. So they develop this more powerful ego to deal with that extreme parental neglect, or they have to be very grown up at too early of an age. There's, I'm sure, a genetic component in there as well. These people can be really tough to deal with because it affects the personality. They don't mind time by themselves, and that's sort of different from like a borderline personality disorder. People with narcissism sort of see people as extensions of themselves. It's like, you are my arms, you are my brain. What feelings does a narcissist experience? They experience shame for their weaknesses. If their weaknesses are brought to their attention, it shatters the illusion that they have of themselves. They have an envy for others who have what they don't and who are skilled at what they're not skilled at. They also have a sense of entitlement, that they are owed something, to special treatment and having all their needs and wants met immediately. They have a fear of being unworthy, of being humiliated and rejected. There's also a category of narcissism where they are hungry for the top. I need to feel all powerful. I will get there at all means. So you might think of a narcissist as someone who's very low functioning and can't do well in organizations or build businesses or companies, but that can be the opposite. They can rise to the top of an empire and be ranked as the best of the best because they have this hunger for success that is a bottomless pit. These people have people all around them that are the extensions of themselves. You're going to work on your weekends. You're going to work on your days off. We're going to use all of your time. And I don't care who I have to use. I don't care if I have to break you down. I don't care if I'm overworking you. You are an extension of me and you're going to make this happen. There's a disregard for other people. They could be neglectful to their own children because they have this insatiable need for power. But just know that they're not always the brains behind it. They look like the brains, so they sort of bring people into their grand schemes. Sometimes the rules only apply when I agree with them or they benefit me. Those rules can change when they need it to fit whatever it is that they're trying to do. Suddenly, it doesn't matter what we did for the other people. What matters is, what are we going to do for me? They might get energy from having an audience to put someone down, to make them feel lower than themselves. And like I said, with higher functioning people, they can kind of coast just fine unless they are triggered by stress. Then all of a sudden a monster comes out, and that monster can be very difficult to tame and very hard to deal with. I've noticed that sometimes they can have memory lapses where they're struggling with their memory, and I don't know if that was developed at a very young age to cope with not having to deal with things that are way too painful, way too stressful, that are too hard on the psyche. You won't see that in all narcissists. They have a need to stand out, look better than everyone else, be noticed. They can be a lot of fun. They can make you laugh. They sort of have a young spirit about them sometimes. On some subconscious or unconscious level, haven't learned to make it on their own. They may have fantasies of perfection, envy of others who have what they lack. They may have a fear of humiliation and shame, and they may actually feel empty inside. They may choose friendships or partners based on image, people that they see as being beautiful or perfection or super successful. They sort of want to be beautiful or wonderful by association. They want to be unique and absolutely adored by people that they love, maybe more so than that person likes anyone else. So sometimes you can see a strong envy or jealousy erupt that's difficult for them to contain or hide. They don't want people to see their defects or their flaws because that would fly in the face of this grandiose image that they have of themselves. They have to be perceived as special. If they are in a period where they feel like you're not meeting their needs, then you can start to see some of their erratic behavior come through, and they will make you understand very clearly that you're not meeting their needs. They might do this by going into rages, humiliating you publicly, abandoning you, belittling your abilities, and maybe even becoming abusive. They might give you the silent treatment, start sulking, saying or doing things to purposefully hurt you or upset you. They could be extremely hurtful to you if you're in a relationship or friendship with them. But just know that they're not going to be spending a lot of time worrying about how they've hurt you or how they crushed you, because in their minds they haven't done anything wrong. So they're not going to spend a lot of time on that type of emotion. In fact, they could dump you and find someone to replace you. These are just some of my observations about people with narcissistic personality disorder. I hope it's been enlightening to you in some way. Thank you for watching my video. Bye!